Hi, I'm Leah from the Salted Image, and today's video is going to be all about how you can get started with still life photography. This will be a brief overview, and I'm going to touch on things like essential gear, getting inspired, flower selection, composition, and light. I'll also share my personal workflow and toss in some tips and advice on how you can get started. So let's go ahead and start with gear essentials. There are two things that you are definitely going to need besides flowers, and that is a camera and light. As far as a camera goes, you can use any camera you have on hand. It could be a DSLR with different lenses. It could be a mirrorless camera. It could even be your smartphone. When it comes to your camera, a major benefit is going to be the ability to control your settings manually. So that means you can change your ISO, your aperture, and your shutter speed. Those settings will help you to have more creative control over your final image. When it comes to lenses, a standard kit lens will be just fine. I actually use a 55mm lens for most of my own still life photography. Now let's go ahead and dive into my favorite subject when it comes to photography, and that is light. The great thing about light is that we all have access to it by using natural light. And natural light can, of course, create incredibly gorgeous photos. When you're starting off in photography, I recommend you use a very diffused natural light that is coming through a window. In my own workflow, I prefer to use off-camera flash. Off-camera flash allows me to create my own light, and it gives me the ability to be very precise with where each shadow and highlight falls on my image. I absolutely love off-camera flash, but I understand that it's not for everyone. So choose the light source that brings you the greatest joy when taking your photos. If you are an artist looking to create art reference photos of your own, I would also recommend using things like a shop lamp or a flashlight or even your cell phone's light in order to get the highlights and the shadows just where you want on your pictures. A few other items that you might want to have on hand is flags and fills. A flag is generally a dark object like poster board that you can use to block light from some part of your frame. So if you didn't want light spilling in onto the table, or if you wanted to block it coming onto your background, you could use a flag to do that. Now fills are pretty much just the opposite. A fill is like what you see with those big round studio reflectors that photographers are often using, and they reflect light and kick it back onto your subject. So you can use fills to fill in shadows if they're too dark and you want a little bit more detail to come out, or you could use it just to brighten your overall image. So flags and fills, they're not necessary, but they are nice to have for more precise control over your light. Another optional item that is actually not optional for my own workflow is a tripod. I love having a tripod because it allows me to work hands-free with my camera, and then I can tweak the arrangement as much as I need. This gives me the option to composite images later if I need to in post-processing. You may not need a tripod for your own style of shooting, and if you don't have a tripod, something you can use is just a sturdy surface like a tabletop or anything that is not going to shift or move during your session. Let's talk briefly about your surface and your background. So the surface, that's going to be where your flower is sitting, can be basically any surface that you have. So you want it to be flat and stable. I have used everything from contact paper that I have in my kitchen drawers, baking sheets, tissue paper, poster board, anything that you can set your flowers on that will help you to create the mood or atmosphere that you are wanting for your pictures. When it comes to background, I do have several gravity backdrops that I really love, but I bought these when the company was newer and I could afford them. Now that they're more established, I actually can't afford gravity backdrops anymore, but if it's within your budget, I definitely recommend them. Something that you can use is basically any fabric that you have at home that is going to be big enough for your backdrop, anything that's going to give you the color and the mood that you want. So get creative with this. I am sure you have all sorts of things around your home that would work perfectly for backdrops and surfaces. Now let's go ahead and talk about inspiration. So depending on your own personality and the way you prefer to work, you might just start and plop down some flowers and get going, or you might want to have a plan beforehand. So I always like to have a starting point. Now this starting point can be a painting, a still from a film. It can be basically anything that you find around you that inspires you. I personally find that I love to emulate the looks of the old masters of Dutch still life paintings, like Rachel Royce, Clara Peters, and although not Dutch, the French painter Henri Fantin-Latour. They're just a few of my favorites. When I find my inspiration image, I generally pull just one aspect from that picture to really concentrate on, and usually that tends to be the overall shape of the arrangement. Some of my favorite shapes to use as starting points are triangles, circles, or a diamond shape. After that, I recommend making a few thumbnail sketches of your own. You don't have to be an incredible artists to do this. Just block in the basic position or structure of the image. It can even be stick figures. Again, it just gives you a starting point. So once you have your starting point, it's time to go ahead and gather your main subject. Often if I'm using a painting as inspiration, there may be a flower that I'm really loving. That helps me in selecting what flowers I'm going to use. I usually start the arrangements with a triangular shape using my main focal flowers. I might take 3 peonies and put them in my triangular form and then start filling in the spaces around the peonies with greenery and other flowers. In that time, I try to experiment with as many different looks as I can. I will often switch out to different vases, different backgrounds, different tabletops. Another thing I would like to say about my arrangements, that they are strictly for photography. If you look at my arrangements from behind, they are a mess. They would not be arrangements that would work at a wedding, on a tabletop, or any kind of centerpiece. They only have to look good from the camera's point of view. And so here you can see I have composed my scene just how I'm wanting it. Now I am setting up my lights. Here I have a Rembrandt light at about a 90-degree angle on my subject. Here you can see I am using a reflector on the opposite side of the light to kick some light back into my shadows and give me just a bit more detail. The black poster board is actually a flag here, and that is blocking the light that is spilling across my table. Experiment with your different aperture settings to have your whole arrangement in focus, or just to select one bloom that will be in focus while everything else around blurs softly. So I would recommend experimenting with the different lighting techniques and sources to find what works best